Before you start your business, it's important for you to understand what are the legal compliances and governances. I was accused of actually withdrawing money from my account, money that belonged to somebody else.
Imagine being on the brink of success, only to lose it all.
I made so many mistakes. I defaulted in paying taxes. I didn't know how to file this, how to file that.
How many times can you fail before you finally rise?
But unfortunately, the branch manager at the bank had forged an email that showed that I gave instructions to withdraw that money.
In this episode, we dive deep into the story of Shehzada Wali, a lawyer, entrepreneur, and innovator.
When I started, I actually took a $2,000 loan, and I repaid that in a month.
A man who faced failure after failure, was even sent to jail.
I was in remand prison for 14 months. Like I said, for me, most challenges gave birth to opportunities.
His journey from rock bottom to success will challenge everything you think about resilience, grit, and the power of self-belief.
You should only do business with a person if you think that they have something to add to the table.
If you've ever felt like giving up, you need to hear this. Stay with us, because this story is about to change how you see your own challenges.
Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Make Your Own Destiny podcast, the podcast that empowers you to shape your future. Today I'm back again, joined with my co-host Musa, and today we're joined with a special guest, Mr. Shehzada Wali, a renowned legal innovator, entrepreneur, and expert in negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. He's the founder and chairperson of Utu Kwanza, a former vice president of the Zanzibar Law Society, an ultramarathon runner, and an EO member. So today we're actually excited to dive into his incredible journey and the insights that he has gathered along the way for all the people that are inspired to become lawyers and with the career that he has had. Make sure you guys stay till the end to listen to what he has to say. You're going to learn a lot, and we hope you take away home what he has learned in his career so far. So in today's episode, we'll understand who he is and how has he managed to be where he is today. And I think it's best we start with who is he actually. So let's give him the floor to understand who Mr. Shehzada Wali is for those who do not know you.
So if you want to know Shehzada Wali, personally, I'm just a very simple guy who likes very simple things. Professionally, I'm currently the managing partner at Rive & Co., the chairperson at Utu Kwanza, an NGO I founded. It's actually called Consciousness for Humanity, but we use the name Utu Kwanza. And at present, I am an EO member, like you mentioned. So EO is an entrepreneur organization. It's one of the largest peer-to-peer entrepreneurship organization in the world. And one of the things I love doing, as you just said, is running long runs. And we'll talk more about that later.
Very nice to have a legal personnel in our podcast because you're the first one. So we never had anyone before you. So can you please share with us how did you get started into law? Like what built your interest?
So getting into becoming a lawyer actually is a very funny story. As a child, I used to come back from school and I used to watch a lot of TV. And I watched a TV series called Ed. E.D. Ed was actually a story about a big shot lawyer who gets divorced and goes to a small town, opens up a bowling alley and a small practice, and he helps people. So watching him help people from day to day sort of inspired me and made me feel like I want to help people as well. And I had some good debating skills and so on, and said, okay, let me look into law. So from Form 2, I decided I would be a lawyer. And once I finished my A-levels, I obviously went into university. But prior to getting into law, I spent 6 months in dilemma, where I went to a career fair and I met a hotel manager. And when he was talking about hospitality and how you can travel around the world being in hospitality, I wanted to change my passion to hospitality.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there were no hospitality schools in Tanzania at that time, and I applied for a grant or a loan to go and study abroad, but that was refused. So, not having funds, I decided to just pay 1.4 million shillings at Tumaini University Dar es Salaam College and joined law.
You mentioned the show Ed. So for me, actually, there was a point in time I thought I could be a lawyer because I watched this series called Suits. I think I watched it at least 3 times. What have you watched the show?
Yes, probably 4 to 5 times.
Oh, what do you think of the show?
Well, I think it's an amazing show. It's one of my favorite shows, of course. I do get inspired every time I watch it. Makes me feel like there's a lot going on and I can do better.
So do you think, because I think sometimes we get distracted by thinking that is how a lawyer can be successful like that and everything. What is the backstory, do you think, of Mike Ross and Harvey Specter, of them being where they are? What do you think should push someone to get where they are? For example, for you, you said you didn't get the funds to go study abroad, and you started at Tumaini, but people have this notion where that just because I did not study abroad doesn't mean that it will mean that I won't be able to be as successful as the people who are studying abroad.
Yeah. I think one of the things I really believe in is once you formulate an intention and you make a decision on what you want to do in life, you just need to take the right steps towards it. And along the way, you will make so many mistakes and you will face so many challenges, but walking that path is the most important thing. So for me, I wanted to become a lawyer and I wanted to practice law in Tanzania. And it was actually for strategic reasons that I also felt studying law in Tanzania would benefit me, because law is a sector where you need a network. Today, 14 years of practice, and I finished my degree in 2007. The people that I studied with are now ministers, magistrates, high court judges, big shots in the law society.
Yeah.
So that network is helpful to me. And so I always tell people that it doesn't matter where you go and study, what is your intention? What do you want to achieve in life? That is what matters. So if you want to study law and you want to practice law in Tanzania, then do that, because it will help you. If you want to study law abroad, think about what you want to do, because when you come back to Tanzania, you still have to go to the Law School of Tanzania to get a postgraduate diploma in legal practice.
Oh.
So you still have to attend a Tanzanian establishment to be able to be accepted and to practice law in Tanzania. So for me, I think it doesn't matter where you study. You just need to have the love and the passion for education and the skills and practices you want to acquire.
So coming from studying at Tumaini, becoming a lawyer, and as you mentioned before, you're the managing partner of Rive & Co. So people would like to know, and I would like to know, is what's the backstory of Rive & Co. and how was the journey?
So again, you will come to understand that my life is all about failures and challenges. So, but those failures and challenges have always given birth to amazing opportunities.
Yeah.
So, for example, the reason why I started my own law firm at the age of 25 was because I wasn't getting a job. When I finished my degree, I wasn't getting a job. And then a friend's mother gave me a job at an audit firm. And I was working there as a company secretary, but I wasn't really happy. Yeah. When I became an advocate, I applied to so many places. And everywhere I went, there was no job, because either I didn't know them, or at one place they were giving jobs to people who were more important in terms of the community. So their kids were getting jobs and so on. So it was very difficult to get a job. And so I sat down every evening after work at the Serena Hotel, formulating my own law firm and creating my own profile and stuff to see, let me go ahead and do something on my own. Yes. And I was only 25 years old at that time, and I started a law firm with a couple of friends called Exor Attorneys. Along the way, I grew. We actually had when I started, I actually took a $2,000 loan, and I repaid that in a month.
Okay.
Even the person giving me the loan was asking me, he said, "How do you start a law firm with $2,000?" And I said, "Give it to me and I'll show you."
Yeah.
So I did that, and we started off with a small office with like a desk like this one, and four of us would share the desk, and that's how the journey began. In 2015, the four of us decided that we're not able to work together. We have different interests,
Yeah.
so we parted ways, and I changed the name to Stallion Attorneys.
Yes.
Fast forward in 2023, we realized that if we want to grow, if we want to become bigger, we need to be able to partner with other lawyers, other law firms. And so we partnered with two other law firms, ABC Attorneys and Sepia Attorneys in Zanzibar. And it gave birth to Rive & Co., which now has offices in Dar es Salaam, Dodoma, Zanzibar, and Arusha. So the failures and the challenges always give birth to opportunities, and I think that's where most of the success comes from.
And when it came down, I want to ask regarding the friends and going apart. Some people believe that just because you started something with someone with a friend has to mean that you have to finish it with them. What message do you have for people that what is the best way everyone can go their own side and still be friends? By the end of the day, business is business. You want to grow your way, I want to grow my way.
So my experience actually taught me never do business with a friend. That's what my experience taught me. Even though the person is a friend, I don't think you must do business with that person. You should only do business with a person if you think that they have something to add to the table. Okay. So you need to weigh out what are your strengths and weaknesses. If you feel that that person can add to your strengths and you can add to their strengths, then you can go and get into business. But also when you do get into business, it's always important to be able to differentiate your friendship and your business partnership. What most people sometimes don't do is they confuse both, and then that's where the problem starts. So for us also, for example, 4 or 5 years of our business, we were great friends. We partied a lot. We had lots of fun together. But when it came to business, it was very difficult to hold each other accountable. And when one was holding the other accountable, the other one felt bad. That why are you telling me something like this? Yeah. So it became very difficult, and hence we decided to part ways. So in a nutshell, I think don't do business just because you're friends. Do business if you can add something to the other person and you really feel that you can create a business strategy that will go for a long way. However, nothing is guaranteed in life. So it's always best if you are parting ways, then you part ways in the best way possible.
We all have role models or mentors that we look up to. So who inspired you to be a lawyer? Or do you have any role models or mentors?
So my inspiration, as I mentioned, that came from a TV series. Most of my inspiration in life came from TV series and movies, actually, because I never had a mentor or a role model. So most of my time spent watching taught me a lot of things. I always watch movies or TV series not from a perspective of entertainment. I always watch them to learn something. And sometimes it could be the most terrible show or movie, but I would watch it to the end just to understand what did I learn. But in the legal fraternity, a couple of people inspired me to be who I am today. The first person is a lawyer called Dr. Ringo Tenga. He was one of the founders and managing partners of Law Associates. He was my lecturer, and seeing him at that point in time in 2009 using technology to teach was inspiring to me. And then there was another lawyer called Dr. Kapinga. He was working at Mkono and Company, and again, he showed up at law school with an amazing Mercedes Benz, with an amazing suit and tie. And when we walked in, I'm like, oh, I want to be like that lawyer. I want to be dressing up like that. So these are the two that actually really inspired me and made me feel that, being a lawyer is much more, and you can actually give more as well, because the way they taught, the way they explained to us what law is, was very different from the other lecturers that were coming to class.
So as you can see, we're both young and we're both trying to find our way into, for example, we have Connectors Club that's starting up, we have other companies that are starting up, and we're both entrepreneurs, and most of the people of our audience are entrepreneurs too. Now, we do face a lot of legal challenges, and from your side, since you're in the legal aspect, what common legal mistake do you see startups or entrepreneurs make, and how can they avoid them?
I think the first thing that most startups do is they look at the opportunity and then they jump into it. So they don't sit down to discuss, and plan. So for example, if you're going to get into a partnership with someone, or if you're going to start a business, what is your business plan? And what are the things that you think will be important for you to succeed in your business? For example, I always tell people, you can always find a good lawyer who will be willing to help you. You will always be able to find a good accountant or a tax consultant who will be willing to share something with you. Before you start your business, it's important for you to understand what are the legal compliances and governances that go into it. When I was a startup, I made so many mistakes. I defaulted in paying taxes. I didn't know how to file this, how to file that. So every penny I was making, I was paying in taxes. And not just taxes, but the government in Tanzania charges you taxes plus penalties plus interest.
Yeah.
So I could see all my money going there.
Yeah.
But had I had good guidance earlier, I would know what to do. Because of that experience, actually, I do a lot of free legal advice to startups, and I sit with entrepreneurs and I give them free advice as well, because I face that. So there are many people like myself that are willing to help, but the problem is people don't want to reach out. So if they reach out, they will notice that there are so many out there, lawyers, accountants, tax consultants, who can do that. So the first step is to understand the legal compliances and the governances that go into the business. But number two, it's very important, if you're going into a partnership or a company setup, sit down with your shareholders and your partners and define your roles and responsibilities. A lot of startups face challenges, especially when they start making it on, so who's supposed to do what, and then you start interfering into people's roles and responsibilities, or you start holding somebody accountable of something, whereas maybe they were not even responsible for it. And so these mistakes are done because people don't sit down and make a partnership agreement or a shareholders agreement that says, I will do this and you will do this. And in some startups, some people come with money, some people come with sweat equity. Again, what is your role? What are you going to be doing? Who's going to be doing what? Everything needs to be on paper. Historically, even different scriptures in religion say you need to put things in writing. If it's not in writing, it will always be misguiding, and it will always lead to miscommunication and misunderstanding. So I would say for startups, it's important, put things on paper and don't just go chasing that opportunity you have.
So from what you said, I have two questions. One, you said that you do give free guidance. Now, for the people that are watching, or even myself, so if I do want to reach out, how can someone reach out to you to get these free guidance? My second question is, you talked about partnership, that people should lay out what to do. So I have a specific question. So say I was to partner up with my co-host right now. and we both have a similar vision to something that we want to achieve through this partnership. And we have not determined, for example, the shares yet or anything of that sort, but we both know that this is what we want to do, this is what we want to achieve. Now, we've done it and it went well, but through doing that, we saw, for example, he managed to bring in through his network, he managed to bring in more money, or through his sweat, he managed to do more than what I could do. But if you go back in time, that we did not determine the shares. So how do you come back now to sit down, for example, for you to come tell me that I think I deserve 70% of this because I did this and this and this, but I go back to him and say, well, we never agreed on that, so why should you get that? How would you describe this type of situation?
Do you want me to answer the second one first or the first one?
I think the first one's just easy. I'd like to hear the second one first.
Okay. So one of the things I know that when we get into business, our motivation is always to make money.
Mm-hmm.
But as partners, it's very important for you to set aside that money aspiration and say, if we're going in as partners, then whatever somebody is going to bring in will be 50-50 unless we're putting it in writing. Because you have to appreciate that both of you started this. It was both of your dream. It was both of your vision.
Mm-hmm.
And that now that one has brought in more money doesn't mean that he walks away with more money. When you go with that mentality, you will not reach your end goal, which is to create a legacy.
Yeah.
To create something that would be a sustainable brand. Because you want to have your internal organization's core values and core purposes and your business strategy to have a sustainable business in future. Now, when you start at such a young age, thinking that if somebody's brought 70 million, now he needs to take 50 and I get 20, all of a sudden you will now start despising that person, because no matter what, each one did put in some time. It doesn't matter who brought in the client. So make sure that if you don't have anything in writing, then learn to say, whatever we bring in to the table, we will split. I used to have a partner, and sometimes I recall I used to bring in a lot of money, but every time I made money, I gave him 50% of it, and without asking, because I knew that whenever I called upon him to come to a meeting or to show up for a client instead of me, he showed up. So he deserves it, and that's how I worked.
And this is, you decided to give him the 50%, not that he asked. Okay. Now, when you go back to the first question, people
The first
reaching out.
person, I mentioned to you that I'm a very simple person who lives a very simple life. So you can share my phone number, you can share my email address, you can share my LinkedIn profile. They can reach out to me however they want to. I do not discriminate on what platform somebody reached out to me at. As long as somebody has the right intention and wants to grow, wants to be successful, wants to know, wants to learn, if I can contribute something to somebody's life, that makes me happy.
And talking about reaching out, there are a lot of Rego personalities in Dar es Salaam and Tanzania in general. So what makes you stand out, and why should people reach out to you?
Well, I think what makes me stand out is a slogan that I'd created when I started my first law firm. And that slogan was always there.
Okay.
I started my practice with the vision of always being there for people, for my clients. One of my motivations to start a law practice was seeing that at that time lawyers treated clients very rudely, like people that don't know nothing, and you had to sometimes wait at a lawyer's office for 2 hours, 3 hours just to get advice.
Okay.
And I wanted to change that. So I was one of the first lawyers in Tanzania that actually was following my client to their offices, or I would have coffee with my client. I would make sure that my client comes first. And so that's where I made a lot of name, a lot of fame, a lot of people started knowing me because they said, if you call him, he'll get it done. So always there was my slogan, and I live by that till today.
For the people that are still struggling to make a mark in the industry, you said until 25 it was very tough to find a job. Now, right now, there's a lot of, for example, my cousin just graduated at law degree. What advice would you have for her, for the other people that are just graduated in law? What message do you have for them?
I think times are different today than they were in the past. My roll number is 1548. Your cousin is probably 11,000 something right now. So times are different. It's not very easy to get into the market at the moment. So you really need to show how good you are. And I do a lot of trainings for lawyers as well in the Law Society. And it's one of my passion to actually groom young lawyers and to train them. And I always tell them that the first step is creating your personal brand. As a lawyer or as a newcomer in this industry, you need to create your personal brand. So start by being active on LinkedIn, start by writing an article or two, start by writing to law firms, but don't just write to law firms applying for a job. Tell the law firm what you can do for them. Tell them how the law firm stands out and what you can bring to the table. In today's market, you have to put yourself out there. If you don't, you're lost. All law firm partners, managing partners are on LinkedIn and Instagram. It's like a race right now. We're all trying to stand out, We shared 4 to 5 stories in a day because we want people to read our stories and see who we are and what we think and how we think. So these people are out there on social media every day. And when they see you stand out, they get impressed. I just gave an opportunity to somebody that wrote an email to the firm, didn't get a response, and then reached out to me on Instagram and said, "Hi, Mr. Shehzada, how are you? I've written to your firm, but I have no response." And I was impressed. I was like, okay, somebody's reaching out to me. And I forwarded the contacts to the HR, and luckily she was called for the interview and she made it. She didn't make it because she reached out to me on the Instagram, but I made sure she got an opportunity to get an interview. So you have to stand out, you have to reach out, you have to put yourself out there. If you're going to hide behind the scenes and just send out CVs and applications, you're not going to make it that way.
And another question for the people that you said standing out is very important. And most of our previous guests, for the likes of Mr. Bakari, they do say that sometimes you shouldn't put money as a factor when you're starting out. What's your thoughts on that? Because a lot of people start thinking, if I'm going to be employed by Rive & Co, they should pay me, for example, 1 million starting off. This is what I want. No, non-negotiable. What's your thoughts on this? People who are just starting out thinking like this.
It's good to know your worth.
Okay.
But how did you measure your worth is the question, right? Yeah. You spent 24 years of your life in school, in university, being behind in a classroom. And now suddenly you have a paper degree that says you're an LLB and you're asking for 1 million shillings. Nobody's going to give it to you just like that. Because when you want to become a lawyer or you want to practice law, it's a practice. So we want to know how good you are. What do you know? What do you bring to the table? So when you start off, it's important for you to put that money aside and say, I'm going to dedicate 2 years of my life learning. And when you learn and when you show that you're a quick learner, you're getting that experience, you're managing expectations of the partners in the law firm, the associates, you will stand out. And trust me, once you've created that personal brand of yours, anybody will reach out to you. I remember I hired an intern, and she was so good that in 2 months she got an offer from an international law firm. And she came to me and she said, Mr. Shehzada, thank you so much for the opportunity, but I'm getting this other opportunity at an international law firm. And I said, I'm really proud of you. I'm very happy for you. You know, you should definitely take it. So she stood out, and that's what's important. Stand out first, learn, get that experience, and go for it. It's very unfortunate that some of us didn't get that experience and we just went for it. But if I had to go back and redo it again, I would love to have worked for a law firm for at least a year or two before I decided to start my own law firm. But that opportunity wasn't offered to me.
And there are two terms that I always confuse between a lawyer and an advocate. What's the difference between the two?
So a lawyer is a person that has graduated with an LLB degree. Okay. Once you graduate with an LLB degree, you're a lawyer. An advocate is somebody that has gone ahead and attended law school and obtained a postgraduate diploma in legal practice that allows them to practice law in the courts, in the courts of law. So a person that has an LLB cannot just go and represent clients in court. You have to have the postgraduate diploma in legal practice and equivalent to what they say passing the bars. You can represent a client. That's called an advocate.
Okay. So it's lawyer first, then advocate.
Yes. So you have to become a lawyer first, and then you become an advocate. And you may choose to not become an advocate and just be a lawyer and do simple consultancies. However, what that happens is when you're just a lawyer, you're then not allowed to sign any legal documents on behalf of your client or sign off on any legal opinions that you're going to be giving to people. You would always need somebody else to sign off a legal opinion because you're not qualified to practice law.
Okay. So are you just a lawyer or you're an advocate as well?
I'm an advocate. So I'm an advocate of the High Court in Tanzania and also in Zanzibar.
So just to get it right, you have to, if you want to become an advocate in Zanzibar, you have to go to Zanzibar
to apply.
Okay. And what are the biggest misconceptions that people have about lawyers, and what have you personally challenged any of these perceptions that they have?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions people have about lawyers is that lawyers are perfect. You know, that they know everything. You know, they misconstrue the meaning of learned people or learned counsel. Lawyers don't know everything. Lawyers just know where to find the law. We're not trained to know everything. We're trained to know where to look for the law, where to look for the solutions, and being called learned people means that we are trained to always keep learning, always keep reading, always keep doing research, always keep being updated. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions people have about lawyers. They sometimes compare us very close to God because they're like, when we go to a lawyer, he's gonna get shit done for us, and we'll make it.
You mentioned I believe it was Mr. Kapinga, that you said used technology at its finest.
Dr. Ringo Tenga.
Dr. Ringo Tenga, how do you think, since you said 2009 he managed to use technology, and right now you can see there's the likes of AI, how do you think the legal industry in Tanzania can adapt to the increasing use of technology and AI?
So I think technology is always the best tool to simplify whatever you're doing, right? As a lawyer, technology now helps you navigate through a lot of things that in the past were difficult. In the past, people used to use typewriters, right? And then print it out and then put it on a nice document, design it, and then put it in an envelope, send it via telegram. Now we do emails, right? I think to begin with, lawyers need to first learn how to use the simple technologies, like using emails, using WhatsApp, all these other communication gadgets. And then obviously AI is something that is an assisted tool that we use. Currently, before we used to use a lot of Google. Now a lot of us even go on ChatGPT to ask questions or to, ask ChatGPT to make a presentation for us. So it's evolving. However, for Tanzania, I feel we're still somewhere behind. Lawyers are still not wanting to adopt. I recall in 2021, I was running for the presidency for the Tanganyika Law Society, and I made a presentation in front of 1,000 lawyers on AI and technology, and I said, the robots are coming, and everybody was surprised, and they were like, "What? What is this guy saying?" Fast forward in 2024, I attended the Law Society meeting, and I was sitting in a room and I was just listening to these people talk about AI, and then somebody stood up and said, Shehzada said robots are coming, and now they're here. We didn't believe him, and it was very interesting to see that, but we're still catching up. But I believe we'll get there.
Do you advise someone to go to AI to seek for legal advice?
Well, AI will only give you what it's learned. So, for example, not all AIs are updated because AI learns from what you feed it.
Okay.
If you go right now and go on ChatGPT and ask them about maybe certain laws, if those laws are not in the web, AI will not be able to tell you these laws. So AI is best used as an assisted tool, but not something that you should 100% rely on. As a lawyer, you need to do extra research. Sometimes I do see people writing articles and also sending me work, and you can tell it's ChatGPT. But when you actually do further research, you realize that a lot of information is false. And this is because AI just picks up whatever it probably learned from here and there and then gave it to you. So as a lawyer, I would say don't make the mistake of focusing on AI alone.
And also, we talked about misconceptions that people have about lawyers. So I had a friend that I used to study with, and he really used to like Louis Late, and he as well wanted to become a lawyer. But then he couldn't become a lawyer, and I asked him why. He told me that his dad told him that being a lawyer is haram. What do you think about that?
So, don't know why he wanted to become Louis Late, because I have respect for his best. But my mom actually also, until today, tells me that being a lawyer is haram. So, because the misconception is that we defend criminals or people that do wrong. Not everybody knows what a lawyer really does. Some lawyers are just simply making money in registering companies for people, drafting documents. So it's very difficult to speak to a certain generation or people with certain ideologies, especially with religious ideologies. Personally, I don't like to engage in religious discussions much or point out somebody's religion, because when we grow up, we don't choose our religion. So we grow up knowing this is our religion, we follow it until we grow old, and if you're fortunate enough to use your brains to do more research, you'll do it. If you don't, then you'll stick to it. So unfortunately, that is an issue. That my mom used to think that I'm defending criminals, and I'm helping all these bad people who get into trouble. I'm getting them out of trouble. So until today, she actually sometimes is like, "Oh, it's haram."
So, as an entrepreneur and legal expert, what's your take on the future of business law in Africa, especially as the continent becomes more globally interconnected?
The good news is that a lot of law firms, a lot of lawyers are already adopting to looking at law as a business. The biggest challenge Tanzania also had especially with lawyers, is that it was very difficult for lawyers to, look at law as a business. And that's because in the past, law was simply looked at as a practice. As a practice in the sense that, we never used to pay corporate taxes, we never used to file returns and all these things. But now we're paying taxes. We need to have a business license to practice law. So we're adapting to that, and Africa in general has also adopted to that law is actually a business and not just a practice. And I feel in the next 5 to 10 years we will keep evolving. And I would not like to blow my own trumpet, but law firms like Rav & Co. are trendsetters when it comes to looking at law as a business. And we're always happy to share, our story, our learnings with others.
So this is I think I'm asking a question on behalf of Connectors Club. Could we, asking you on the spot, could we have a time and day that we could organize, and for the people that will be reaching out, to have them come sit down and listen to you give advice to the new lawyers or even new startups that are on the way to becoming wherever they want to become?
Sure.
Okay, so I think that can be organized. And we talked about you have an NGO known as Utu Kwanza.
Yes.
My question is, what drove you to start this NGO, and where do you hope to see it in the next 5 years? And for the people that don't know it, what is its main objective, Utu Kwanza?
Okay. So Utu Kwanza, as its name, means humanity first.
Okay.
Right? I founded Utu Kwanza when I was actually in remand prison. So I was in remand prison for 14 months. Like I said, for me, most challenges gave birth to opportunities. So being in remand prison, I noticed that a lot of people's humanity was being affected, and that people that were in prison did not have a quality of life. And when I talk about quality of life, it means having the basic needs, to survive. So from access to food, water, to health, education, to a decent job and earning, right? Yes. Health. So these were all that were missing out. And when people were in remand prison, their families were being affected as well. But I also noticed that psychologically, somewhere, somehow, even the prison officers were being affected, because they end up spending so much time in prison with the prisoners, and they were also being affected. So there was an incident that happened in remand prison where I had to stand up for another prisoner, and when the prison officer, told me, like, Shehzada, achana naye, I told him, hiyo sio utu. And the moment I said hiyo sio utu, I went back to my cell and I told myself, you know what, I want to start something. So I started that in 2018 when I was in remand prison. And again, fortunately, when I started the NGO, 2 months down the line, I was released, and I was found basically innocent of not doing anything. And from there, my journey to see that we provide quality of life to people that get arrested, that are in prison, is there. And that when I was there, I felt, or I spoke to so many people, and about 80 to 90% of the people that are in remand prison are actually innocent. They're actually facing, an unfortunate incidences that lead to consequences that put them in there. Mm-hmm. Some people were there at the wrong time, at the wrong place, and so that's how my journey for Utu Kwanza started.
So is it mainly focused on prisons, because you've seen how it is there?
So my primary focus is to see that we advocate for the quality of life of prisoners, their families, and prison officers. But as the name stands, Utu Kwanza, the opportunity arrives to do something for people out there, as long as it touches humanity, as long as it shows people that we need to look at humanity and put humanity first, we would probably jump into that opportunity.
How does it work? Do you guys go provide education or?
So, because of lack of understanding of the organization and lack of funding, we started very basic things initially. Basic things like, for example, we went to a prison and asked, "What is your biggest challenge?" And a prison said, "We don't have milk for the sick and the elderly." So we went and bought cows and provided cows to the prison. And those cows today, I think, have doubled or tripled. And there is always milk for the elderly and the sick. So we started very small. We went and helped the women there. We visited the children. We now finally have started a project called the Legal Aid Desk Project, which is at the Kinondoni Resident Magistrate Court, where we're helping those people who are arrested for the first time. So if any one of you has ever been arrested, you will know that when you get arrested, you have no access to phone, you have no access to family and friends sometimes. So what we're doing is to show that humanity exists. We are showing that comfort to them and saying, if you want to make a phone call to a friend or family, we have a phone for you. If you want to go fetch documents for bail, we will get it for you. If you want some legal advice and coaching, we will coach you. If you need a lawyer to get bail for you, we will go look for one for you. So we've started that project, and now it's been about 3 to 4 months in existence.
And how's it going?
I think it's going really well. However, now we have a challenge, which is a very interesting challenge. So in the first month, we started helping these people, and unfortunately, the police in the courts stopped us, and they said, "How is it that we're arresting them and you're freeing them?" So it's been a challenge trying to explain to the police and the people there that everybody has a right to legal representation and coaching. So that's the current battle I'm fighting, to try and get the government and the police and everybody to understand that these people also have legal rights and they should be treated as humans. So if they are getting access to make a phone call or to get representation for their bail hearing, they should be given.
So we previously discussed before the episode started that you run a 60-kilometer marathon from Bagamoyo to Dar es Salaam.
Yeah.
That is not something small. And I believe the motivation behind this was Utu Kwanzaa.
Yes.
So how did this experience shape your mindset personally and also professionally?
So I think, first of all, I'd never run in my life, like do long runs. I used to run to play football and here and there, for other activities. Running 60 kilometers happened to me last year, and this was in pursuit to be able to raise funds for the Legal Aid Desk Project and Utu Kwanzaa. What I can say is it's shaped my life personally in the sense that it's made me more disciplined. Because when you set a goal like 60 kilometers, no matter where you are, what time it is, you need to get up and go for a run and train, or wake up and do your strength training or body weight training. You need to watch what you're eating. You need to, face so many challenges. You get injured, so you keep learning and training, and that has made me more disciplined in life. I used to be disciplined in the past, but this made me more disciplined. That now it doesn't matter whether it's the heat or the cold. If I have to train, I will train, and I will go out there and do it, because I know I need to achieve this. Professionally, I would say, to be a professional, you need to have discipline, persistence, consistency. You need to be hardworking. You need to have respect for time, all these things, and you need to be physically fit and healthy. So when I pursued this challenge, it's made me all of those, including fit and healthy. I think I'm in the best shape of my life today than I was when I was probably 14, 15 years old. or when I was 22 years old, partying in a club.
You're a lawyer, and you said you were in prison for 14 months.
Yeah.
So, if a lawyer is taken to prison, do you get to defend yourself?
The right to defend yourself is available to anybody, not just lawyers. Anybody can defend themselves, but I would always discourage defending yourself because you need somebody to represent you with a clear mind, with a strategy and without any emotions. When you're in remand prison, you are full of emotions. You're in a place where people in prison basically refer to prison as a graveyard, because once you're there, you're in four walls. People just come visit you, look at you, and go. It's like visiting a graveyard and saying, "Hello, uncle. We miss you." So you go through a lot of emotional trauma. Your mental health status is not that great. It also depends on how you're taking it. So, and then representing yourself, I would never advise anybody to do that, even if you're a lawyer. However, when I was there, I was doing a lot of research that would help my lawyers represent me probably. But I would never do that.
What were you accused of, and how did you get over it?
So I was accused of actually withdrawing money from my account, money that belonged to somebody else. But unfortunately, the branch manager at the bank had forged an email that showed that I gave instructions to withdraw that money. It took 14 months for the police to realize that that email was fake. So when they realized that the email was fake, they released me and said, "We're really sorry. You had to go for a 14-month vacation, but now you need to go home."
And do you think, obviously not talk about the case or anything, but do you think this is due to technology? For example, if it was in the Western world, it would have been easier to realize that this was just a forgery that was made?
I think it has a lot to do with many things. Unfortunately, we live in a country where attention to detail is not the first priority. We miss out on a lot of these details. Our police, our institutions are overworked, overwhelmed. We don't have many people that have that expertise. So we're still understaffed in every area in the government as well. We have really good people. I've worked with amazing investigators in the police, but you have to get lucky to get that one smart investigator. So technology does play a role, yes, but also, that attention to detail thing is unfortunately lacking in most people around us in this country, and that is what was the challenge. But also, unfortunately, in my case, there were certain personal interferences from people that I cannot disclose, that sort of said he's better off in there relaxing.
And when it comes down to advice, you just gave advice of not representing yourself. I want to ask, what is the best advice you've ever received, and how did that impact you?
So the best advice that I've ever received is that you don't need experience to overcome challenges. Through overcoming challenges, you get experience. And this was an advice that was given to me when I was starting my first business, my law firm, because I was 25 years old and I asked this man who was very experienced, and I said, aren't people going to laugh at me and say, "What are you doing? You're 25 years old, you've never worked at a law firm, you're out there wanting to practice law." And he said, "Listen, you get experiences through challenges. So yes, you will fail, you will face a lot of challenges, but you will learn and get experience." So even when I went for my first court case, I didn't know nothing, and I lost it, and but I learned a lot, And my next case, because I learned from the first case, I won the case.
If you could have a conversation with any historical figure who inspired justice or change, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Well, one of the biggest inspirations in my life, there are actually three people that I'm very inspired by. Uh, Unfortunately, all three are dead. Uh, but one is Steve Jobs. You know, I always admired how he looked at simplicity, and that's what's inspired me to always be simple and to put things around me simple. Um, Nelson Mandela, obviously, because I was in prison like him, and Mahatma Gandhi, because I really liked his resilience on fighting for a cause without using any violence. So I think if I was to have conversations with these people, um, I would probably just ask them, you know, what inspired them, but also what could I do to be better? Because one of my life goals is always to be better, to do better. And I don't believe that somebody is successful already. I think success is a journey, you know, and you're always going to be uh, achieving milestones, and that's how I measure success. It's a journey. I'm not successful. I'm on a journey.
Yeah. And you said you are inspired by Nelson Mandela, and we all know Nelson Mandela was in prison for a lot of years, 27 years, yeah. And you had 14 months. So there's one question I've always wanted to ask: how a day is counted in prison? Because I heard that day and night counts as 2 days. Is that just a misconception or is it a reality?
Yes. So they don't count the night. They only count the day. So your day starts at 6 a.m. and it ends at about 4 5 p.m. where you go back into your cell. So they open the cells for you at 6 a.m. where you can move around and talk and chit chat and work out and read books and do whatever you want to do. And then about 4 o'clock, sometimes even 3 o'clock, it depends on their moods. If they're tired of us, they say get in first. You know, like, you know, you put cows and sheep inside. It's like get in, you know, because you're also counted when you go in. So that's how. So they don't count the night.
Okay.
So if you're facing, let's say, 1 year in prison, then it could sometimes be just 8 months, like that.
Okay.
But when you're in remand prison, it's different, because being in remand means you're waiting for your fate. You're not convicted yet. There's a difference between somebody being convicted and somebody waiting for his fate in remand prison.
Yeah. And when you're in prison and you're doing some works, do you get paid for those work that you're doing?
So in Tanzania, unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And that is one of the things that, as Utu Kwanza, part of our advocacy, we want to work on, to see that people do get paid. But at the moment, people don't really get paid. So sometimes they would get maybe small allowances. You know, we call them posho. You know, here and there, or they would get some really good food, because sometimes you get sent to work in certain areas. So let's say if you're in Morogoro and you're asked to work maybe around a hotel, or there are people that do, a lot of prisoners go to Sabasaba grounds to work there. So sometimes they'll get nice food maybe, you know, or some posho here and there, get to get a smoke here and there, you know, that's what they benefit.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend a few weeks ago, and he told me that the justice system and the prison system is not there to defend people's rights, because there are a lot of people who are actually not guilty but are still in prison. But the main aim of that is for the government to make money. How true is that?
Unfortunately, there's no truth in that, because the government actually bleeds money when people are in prison, because they have to feed all these people. At the moment, the prisons are actually independent. During the time of the late Magufuli, he said that prisons should not receive money from the government. So a lot of these prisoners are they're self-sustainable. So that's why you would see prisons have farms and mines and this and that. The prisons, for example, in Ukonga, they have a whole like a furniture workshop where they make furniture and they supply to sell those furniture. So they're now self-sustainable. So the government makes no money by having prisoners. It actually bleeds money. The reason why people are in prison, as I said, is because of, and it's not just in Tanzania, it's all over the world. Just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. I'll give you a simple example. One guy was there for a rape case. But basically, unfortunately with Tanzania, because of the economic situation, people rent rooms and they can't rent houses. So this guy had rented a room close to his sister's room, and he visited his sister and he was in the other room. And then his sister's friend was in the other room. And some guys came and they raped the friend. And he was in the other room. This girl unfortunately did not see who raped her because it was dark. And unfortunately, when the police came, the first suspect was this guy because he was in the next room. And he was taken away. So he was there and his bail was open actually. So when he talked to me about it, I felt touched and I was like, okay. And because I'd say Alhamdulillah, I was in a good position to help people, then I supported him by paying his bail money in court. And then he was released on bail. I'm not sure what happened to him in future because I was still there. But I know he came a couple of days later bringing me food and drinks, to say thank you. But he had not done anything. I have so many stories of these kind of people. And that's why I say that I was inspired to do what I do, because I just felt that even if we can't help them come out of the situation, at least we can treat them as human and give them, the best nutrition, the best food, the best healthcare, the best education while they're there.
So coming to the end, in our podcast culture, we started something new, that a previous guest will leave a question for the next guest, not knowing who the guest is and you not knowing who left you the question. So the question that was left by the previous guest is, how do we fast track building the gap of understanding between corporate executives and young executive entrepreneurs who are the future of this country, but they are not anywhere near the formal decision making process?
Okay, so I'm trying to understand the question. Is it saying how do we
fast track building the gap of
understanding between
corporate executives and young executive entrepreneurs who are the future of this country?
Okay, so the question is a little bit vague because the word understanding is challenging, but I would say I think to be able to bridge that gap between current corporate executives and young executives is to first of all probably do something that you're doing already, right? I think as Connectors Club you're doing an amazing job, trying to connect people like us to people who are young and people who are aspiring to do better. But I think hosting workshops and networking events where you bring in these corporate executives and these young executives and have a dialogue between them, because currently the biggest challenge that those who are already in a certain position have with people who are growing and coming up is there is that demeaning nature to say, because this person is a Gen Z, this person thinks like this and acts like that, why can't they act like I do, who's probably a millennial? So bridging that gap needs to have an open dialogue on what do these young executives want and expect, because they have expectations, but also what do these corporate executives want and expect. That way we will be able to work together, because Gen Zs are right in their space, and the millennials and older are also right in their space. They just need to come together and have a dialogue.
I think that's very true. And as you said, we both, Musa likes to say this, that you have to bring value to the corporate, and the corporate has to bring value to the young executive.
Yes.
Now, what question would you leave for our next guest? Not knowing who it is, but they have to answer your question.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I think what the next guest could answer is, what do you see as the future of young entrepreneurs in Tanzania?
Thank you very much. Now, guys, that comes to the ending of our podcast, and we had Mr. Shehzada today. We discussed a lot. I personally learned a lot. I'm pretty sure Musa learned a lot when it comes down to partnerships, when it comes down to legal counseling, when it comes down to the prisons, and Utu Kwanza too. And he also said that if you guys want to reach out to him, he's a very simple person. You can reach out if you guys want. I'll provide the number, and Connectors Club will be sure to organize if it's a seminar, so that we can all go learn more and ask him questions, because I'm pretty sure there are other people that had more questions for him, but we did not ask. So I hope you guys join us for our next episode, and thank you very much. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe.